So as Ged is trapped in the labyrinth and R is still in this phase of toying with him, there's a point where she sends him to the painted room. But the directions are extremely convoluted. It's all these rights and lefts, and it's obviously a confusing pathway. Her pride kind of comes out full throttle, and she thinks to herself, well, if he can't find it, then let him die. He doesn't deserve to be here if he can't find it. She's giving him directions, and he's exploring, in some sense, herself. He has to accept all these directions, and he just has to follow. He has to listen to what she's saying. And if he can't do it, she thinks, well, let him die. She sort of contradicts herself here because she thinks, again, well, if he dies, let his soul wander until it's devoured. And this is an earlier contradiction of the pity that she expressed against Castle. So this is one of those first instances of this internal struggle we see happen. The next is when she goes to one of the peoples the next morning to peer into the room, and he's not there. So she calls to him, and there's no response. And she sneers, but inside, as she's waiting for this response, her heart is pounding. There's another point where she thinks, oh, I won't give him water, I won't give him food, I'll let him die. As she's thinking that, she's rocking back and forth. And then there's an even more interesting point where, because she eventually tells Castle that Ged is there, and Castle immediately reacts with, the tombs are defiled. But before that, she considers not telling Castle because Castle is so vile, and Castle will just want to kill him, while thinking about how she is going to let him die. So we see there's two different emotions for each of these, representative of two different selves. There's a point where she's speaking to Ged, and Ged responds to some offense that she takes to something he said. I do not mean offense. I am a stranger and a trespasser. I do not know your ways, nor the courtesies due the priestess of the tombs. I am at your mercy, and I ask your pardon if I offend you. If she reacts with offense, that's dangerous for Ged, because then in some sense he can never gain the ring, because he can never find amity with her. He can never find harmony with her. And it's also important to remember that Ged is that up to this point done no fighting in the labyrinth. He's done no fighting in the tombs. So he's not coming in disagreeable. He's not making her retreat into the indoctrinated belief she knows. He's trying to draw her out of that. All he does is he comes in, he shines a light so she can see her true self. And he reveals her to herself. And also he's just more or less submitting to the powers the whole time. He's defensive. He's protecting himself. But he's also trying to do in a way that doesn't provoke her. He doesn't want to die to her. The goal is for her to grow accustomed to him, to find harmony with his ways and his views. And although he desires the princess, he doesn't desire an exploitative way. Nor does he want to just acquire the treasure for greed. He wants accord. He wants her true self, because only in her true self will there be actual lasting peace. And we also learn that the Nameless Ones are the exact dark evil that Ged fought, right? The dark evil of humans. And it's interesting to note that Ged makes a point that the evil he faced was nothing compared to this one. The evil from one person could never match the lasting evil that's propagated through centuries by these strong institutions. And as Ara is very much wavering between what to do with Ged, we get a line in the book that shows her once again retreating into herself. And it goes, the priestesses whose looks were stern and cool, but whose lives were all a secret wrangle of jealousies and miseries and small ambitions and wasted passions. Right, so she sees them kind of low as petty, but she who served the great powers, she, the priestess of grim night, was free of all that pettiness. So once again, retreat. Everything for her is just to retreat farther into the only freedom, the only self-expression she has, even in the presence of Ged, who's trying to reveal her. But it makes sense. There's outrage. There's a backlash that comes when he does begin to reveal herself. She starts to retreat even further, even faster. It is interesting to speculate. Could Ged have broken down the door to the labyrinth? So I think he claims he couldn't have, and that seems possible. I also do wonder if he had really tried, could he have? Maybe he knew something that none of the other wizards maybe had known. That if he does bash this door down, smashes through all of her deepest beliefs, and then there's no way she's going to accept him. He can't really do that, because then there will never be peace. And by not boasting, by not pushing her away with arrogance, by not mocking these evil indoctrinated beliefs, they kind of begin to converse, and he shows her one of his illusions, and she's wearing a gown. And there's a moment where she's taken aback. She finds this potential freedom that she could have, that she doesn't possess, intoxicating. But then her kind of repressed beliefs come out, and she expresses outrage, saying, "No, get it off me. I don't want this thing near me." And so, yeah, initially she kind of rejects a lot of what he does as lies, as just illusions, as a fake power, whereas what she has is the real power. In his presence, she feels weak, ignorant, futile, cloistered, whereas he's worldly, smart, knowledgeable. So his presence belittles her. Her sadistic side sort of wants him to wince and plead. She wants him to be the thing that she was taught he was, this vile creature just hell-bent on destroying their culture. She hates that he won't go out of his way to offend her, to attack her ideas. And there's a point in the book, why did he sit there so defenseless and so strong? This contradicts what Castle taught her about the wizard. She likes that Ged is willing to wait for her, is willing to stay strong, to find what that light was in her, what that potential human aspect in her was. So there's one point where he shows her the illusion with the dress on. It's actually Ged that he kind of points up and alerts Ara to Castle's presence. So Castle is spying on Ara. And it's very interesting thinking about what those peepholes would mean. They're actively spying on her internal beliefs. They're trying to control her. They see that, oh, you still have this belief in this wizard. And meanwhile, Ara, through all this, is still waiting for Ged to be that spiteful, sacrilegious creature that Castle has warned about. Against all her teaching, she ends up leading Ged through the labyrinth into the treasure room. This is a place where only the one priestess can go. So not even Castle could go here. Manana, her attendant, cannot go here. Ged is only allowed in there temporarily because she's willed it so. So since he's seeing this great treasure that she has within her, that light, Tanar, there's so much internal conflict and confusion. She's telling him, oh, you'll never escape. You're gonna die down here. But I brought you down here to be safe from Castle. Because if you get out, someone's gonna kill you. And even though he's gonna die down here, I've saved you from Castle. And then right at the end, she's like, I'll be back with food and water. And you can tell, she has no idea. And Ged, too, feels betrayed. He thinks she may have led him to his death. And you can tell at this point, he thinks, well, maybe I did miscalculate. And it's clear that she's fighting off this old beliefs. It's a struggle. And as she's leaving, Ged has ascertained her true name through listening, through empathy, just as Ojin taught, by understanding her in relation to what she was, by really meeting her, by finding that imbalance, by seeing how everything had warped her inside. He realizes that her own soul has been trapped in the tombs, and he even mentions to her, because I could see the light of you. The mage light in the Undertomb, right? He tells her name, he speaks it, and this name has power, even in the face. It's in the deepest influence of the Nameless Ones in the treasure room, at the deepest part of the labyrinth. Immediately there are going to be references to the sun, to light, life, there's smells of porridge, wind, and all these other sensations. And she's revived, she's revitalized. She gets up top and she immediately feels courageous. There's this intense, she just calls out Castle in front of everyone. Everyone's terrified because this is Castle's scary. Or she has the authority of the God King, and they're pretty brutal. And she curses Castle and brings a curse down on her, and her attendant Manon later is like, you have to remove the curse, you have to remove the curse, and she's defiant, no way. But Castle also makes some serious threats to her, and it's intense. But it's cool because she gets her name, and that light in her just glares. But she also gets this sense that she's completely isolated herself from everything she's ever known. Castle, at this point, kind of wants her dead. She lives in Kargat, and now in this continent ruled by the God King, so obviously she's sort of a heretic, I guess, in her own land. Manon, her attendant, her loyal attendant, is hesitant. So at this point in the story, all Tanar has is Tanar. She has only that little light in the face of all this darkness. She has her name, and possibly Ged, which is a powerful ally. When she returns to Ged and he tells her something, and this is very intense. They are dark and undying, speaking of the nameless ones, and they hate the light, the brief, bright light of our mortality. They are immortal, but they are not gods. They never were. They are not worth the worship of any human soul. I don't know, that's pretty powerful. Even though it's this centuries-old tradition, this isn't worth worshipping. Who, even if they were somehow immortal, who cares? That doesn't make it okay. That doesn't make it right. She finally chooses, along with Ged, to be Tanar. She chooses to those memories of her life. She decides to help Ged escape. And he's going to help her. It is unfortunate, right as they're leaving the treasure room, Manon tries to save Ara, and he falls into a pit and he dies. But you also have to remember that Ara had already died. When she accepted Tanar, there was no Ara. There was no place for Manon to be. So he died kind of along with Ara. And there's this scene where Ged, without knowing anything about what Manon has ever called her, refers to her as Little One. This is exactly what Manon used to call her at the beginning. So we see that once Ara dies, her attendant dies with her. Once she accepts Tanar, Ged replaces Manon, calling her the same thing. He's her new guide. And then as she's traversing these paths at the end, right, because now the Nameless Ones, the wrath is coming down on all of them, it's getting crazy, the tombs are falling in, her old belief system is being crushed. She starts to forget the past. She's trying to traverse old paths even though she's just abandoned them. The ruins collapse, the collapsing of the mindset. She's sort of a blank slate. What does she do? Who does she be? Well, she needs someone to help guide her, and that's Ged. And he is kind of a psychologist, I guess. Psychologist wizard, right? That's his profession. So Ged recovers the other half of the Ring of Erethokbe, and that is obviously represents the peace between these two different peoples, this alliance. But it was done through psychological acceptance of the others, and not just fear and distrust. And there's moments near the end where she doesn't know what to do. She starts to have doubts where she feels responsible for all this evil. And Ged tells her, no, don't, that's not you. This was done to you. You were a victim. And then it's cool because it ends and he eventually tells her, I'm going to take you to the city, but eventually I'm going to take you to Oji. And that seems like a wise choice. And that's where it ends.